Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves because what we're witnessing right now is not politics as usual. This is not another tweet, another hearing, another headline. No. What exploded this week is something the United States has never seen in modern history. Sitting Democratic lawmakers releasing a coordinated message urging the United States military to resist. Yes, resist the lawful orders of President Donald J. Trump. And the moment that video dropped, Chuck Schumer absolutely lost it. A full-blown meltdown on the Senate floor, shaking, pointing, shouting, claiming Trump is calling for executions, while refusing to mention the one thing that triggered this entire firestorm in the first place. Because here's the truth that Schumer won't say out loud. Trump didn't start this fight. Democrats did. 6 lawmakers, former CIA, former Navy, former paratroopers, former intel, looked straight into the camera and told America's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and intelligence officers that they must refuse illegal orders without naming a single order, without citing a single law, and without explaining who gets to decide what's illegal in that moment. That's not a reminder. That's not a civics lesson. That is a spark. And sparks start fires. And the moment President Trump called it seditious behavior, suddenly the same Democrats who recorded the video pretended that they were the victims, running behind Chuck Schumer like he's their political bodyguard. And he, knowing exactly what they had just done, launched into one of the most unhinged performances that Washington, D.C. has seen this year. Because here's what's really happening. Democrats thought their little refuse orders video would score political points. Instead, it detonated in their own hands. It exposed them. It cornered them. And so now, with the country watching, the question on everyone's mind is the one that they're all terrified that you're going to ask. Did they just cross into treason territory? Drop a treason down below if you think that they did, because tonight we're going to break it all down. The video, the fallout, Schumer's panic, Trump's response, the legal lines, the military implications, the constitutional crisis that they almost sparked, and what this means for America under President Trump in 2025. Because if you thought that the first term was intense, buckle up, folks. This is something entirely different. Now, hit the like button and subscribe. Stay right there because what comes next is the part that Schumer hopes you never hear. Now, I want to start at the source of this entire political earthquake, the video itself. 6 Democratic lawmakers, all with national security resumes that they love to flaunt. Elisa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, Jason Crow, Chrissy Houlihan, Chris Deluzio, and Maggie Goodlander. They appeared together in a highly coordinated message aimed directly at America's active duty military. Now, Slotkin's CIA past, Kelly's Navy command, Crow's Army Ranger credentials, Houlihan's Air Force background, Goodlander's Navy intelligence service, and Deluzio's military policy role, they were all leveraged to give their statement authority. And what did they tell service members? To refuse illegal orders, defend the Constitution, and resist threats from within. Words delivered while President Trump is the sitting president. Tension doesn't start any bigger than that. Now, the moment that this video hit the internet, conservatives saw it for what it was, for what it looked like, an invitation, however softly worded, to challenge the president's authority. Now, the phrase illegal orders sounds responsible right up until you realize how deliberately vague it is. Like, they didn't name a single example of an order that President Trump had issued or might issue that violated the law. Not one. And in the military, ambiguity is poison. Soldiers depend on clarity, absolute clarity, because a single moment of hesitation can shatter the chain of command. So when 6 lawmakers tell troops they must refuse certain orders without defining any specifics, kind of reads not as guidance, but as mutiny dressed up as patriotism. Now, President Trump didn't wait for the media spin or for the usual political cleanup operation. He came out real fast and he came out direct, calling the lawmakers' video seditious behavior. This is a term that carries real legal weight, not rhetorical flair. So under federal law, sedition involves undermining or obstructing lawful government authority, and Trump pointed out that telling the military to ignore the commander-in-chief fits that description and definition dangerously well. He labeled the lawmakers as traitors, not as an insult, but as a description of behavior that erodes national stability. And that right there, my friends, that traitor remark is what triggered the panic, because for the first time, a sitting president wasn't brushing it off. He was naming it what it was. This was treason. And within hours of Trump calling the behavior seditious, Chuck Schumer, he rushed to the Senate floor and delivered one of the most explosive tirades of his career. His voice shook as he accused President Trump of calling for the execution of elected officials, a dramatic claim that ignored Trump's actual words and the context behind them. Schumer referenced January 6th, referenced assassination attempts, and painted Trump as a uniquely dangerous figure, all while refusing to acknowledge the video that started the entire confrontation. His meltdown wasn't about defending democracy, it was about shielding his own caucus from scrutiny, and anyone watching, they could pretty much see and hear the fear behind his fury. Now ask yourself this: is your Medicare plan strengthening your retirement or quietly draining it? Because the wrong plan can bleed your savings year after year without you even noticing. Millions of retirees, they're already getting those dreaded letters from their doctor saying, "We will no longer accept your insurance next year. Call Chapter to get your new coverage." This is why I partner with Chapter, folks. They make your Medicare plan work for you for your retirement and not against it. Now, one viewer said, "Chapter saved me thousands. My Medicare plan finally works for me." So let me ask, guys, do you really want your retirement drained, or do you want your retirement protected? Now, most people, they're dialing the phone number at the bottom of your screen right there, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. And probably the best time to call them is first thing in the morning. But one of our commenters by the name of Dick said that Chapter got me $100 back every month. That's amazing. Now, the most shocking part of Schumer's meltdown wasn't what he said, it was what he refused to say. So in his entire floor speech, he never once acknowledged the Democrat video telling U.S. service members they must refuse illegal orders. Not a word. And that omission is everything, guys, because Schumer accused Trump of promoting political violence while concealing the very fact that his own members of Congress, fellow Democrats, had just recorded a message that could fracture the military chain of command. Americans watching at home, they saw only half the story, and that was the design. Schumer didn't want the public thinking about the video, the message, or the implications. He wanted outrage, but only outrage directed at Trump. And so when White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepped to the podium, she delivered the clearest rebuttal yet. She reminded the press that President Trump never called for executions. He cited the existing penalties for sedition under federal law. And then she turned the spotlight right back where it belonged, on the 6 Democratic lawmakers who knowingly leveraged their military intelligence backgrounds to signal authority to active duty troops. Now, Caroline Leavitt argued that they understood exactly how their message would be interpreted inside the ranks. Their experience wasn't just a credential. It was the very reason that their statement was so dangerous. In her words, this wasn't political theater. This was a coordinated act of subversion. So what truly set off alarms inside the Pentagon and across conservative circles was the national security risk embedded in that Democrat video. The U.S. military functions on a razor-sharp chain of command. One voice, one line, one commander-in-chief. The moment you introduce doubt, even a sliver into that structure, you risk chaos. With 1.3 million active duty troops, even 1% hesitating or questioning orders during a crisis could mean delayed responses, fractured units, or even worse. Foreign adversaries watch for precisely this kind of weakness, and Democrats, by pushing troops to refuse orders under President Trump, handed America's enemies a narrative that they've dreamed of, an American military questioning its own leadership. Now, many political analysts believe that this wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Democrats have been struggling to create momentum heading into the 2026 midterms. Their government shutdown gambit fizzled. Their economic messaging has fallen flat, and party infighting between establishment Democrats and the rising Democratic Socialist faction has fractured their base. So what's left? Create the impression of constitutional crisis. Manufacture fear. Suggest that the military is in danger under Trump. So when all else fails, chaos becomes a strategy. And by releasing that video, these 6 lawmakers gave Democrats a new narrative to rally around, even if it destabilizes trust in the military. It's totally reckless, it's dangerous, and it's politically desperate. And as expected, legacy media outlets rushed to rewrite the timeline. Instead of reporting the Democrat video as the trigger, they focused entirely on Trump's response, editing out the very thing that caused it. Headlines painted Trump as the aggressor, claiming he was threatening lawmakers. Meanwhile, burying the fact that 6 Democrats just told active duty military personnel that they could ignore the commander-in-chief. Networks framed Trump's comments as dangerous rhetoric, but conveniently avoided playing or describing the Democrats' original message. This selective framing misled millions of viewers into believing and thinking that Trump escalated out of nowhere. The media didn't just amplify the story, they completely distorted its origin to protect the preferred narrative. Now, President Trump's use of the word seditious wasn't hyperbole. It launched a legitimate legal debate. I mean, under federal law, sedition involves attempts to hinder or oppose lawful government authority. So the question becomes, does publicly urging service members to refuse orders from the commander-in-chief qualify? Well, legal scholars are divided. Some argue the video is protected political speech. Others say that when individuals, intelligence, military, and national security credentials speak directly to uniformed service members, the line between commentary and incitement blurs dangerously. The ambiguity itself has fueled national anxiety. So if this isn't sedition, critics ask, then what is? And if it is, then what comes next? One of the most telling aspects of this video is who Democrats chose to deliver the message. These weren't random lawmakers. These were individuals with military and intelligence pedigrees. I mean, Slotkin's CIA background, Kelly's Navy command career, Crow's experience as a paratrooper and Army Ranger, Houlihan's Air Force service, Goodlander's national security work, DeLuzio's defense policy role. I mean, their resumes aren't an accident. All right. They give their words unmatched credibility inside the ranks. Democrats knew that if a freshman lawmaker with no service history said refuse orders, troops would ignore it. But when veterans with operational authority say it, that carries weight. This wasn't symbolic messaging. This was targeted influence. Now, the reason this crossed such a dangerous line is because military obedience isn't theoretical. It's immediate. Orders are time sensitive, mission specific, and sometimes life or death. Now, courts issue conflicting rulings all the time. Appeals, overturned decisions, legal interpretation shift. So imagine a scenario where President Trump issues an order and a soldier exposed to this Democrat video hesitates, wondering whether a court somewhere might later label this order illegal. Who do they follow? The commander-in-chief? A congressman on social media, a judge in a lower court? That pause, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, it can cost lives, missions, or national security. And Democrats didn't just spark a debate. They risked operational confusion in real time. Now, for Chuck Schumer, this wasn't just another partisan skirmish. This was personal political peril. As Senate Minority Leader, he is the face of the Democratic caucus. If these 6 lawmakers are accused of sedition, treason, or even reckless endangerment of national security, the blowback lands directly on Schumer's feet. He must defend them, not because he believes their video was responsible, but because admitting wrongdoing would expose a catastrophic lapse in leadership within his own ranks. His trembling speech, his escalating accusations, his refusal to mention the video, those weren't signs of principled conviction. These were signs of a man terrified that his caucus just crossed an unforgivable line. A pattern has emerged over the past decade, and this incident fits it perfectly. Democrats, they accuse President Trump of precisely the behavior that they themselves are engaging in. Then they say that he incites violence, yet the video tells service members that they can just ignore the president's commands. They say Trump threatens democracy, yet they publicly undermine the chain of command that protects it. They say Trump endangers institutions, but they erode trust in the military by injecting their own political messaging into its ranks. This contradiction isn't subtle, it's glaring. And it also reveals a truth voters increasingly recognize. The accusations aren't reflections of Trump's behavior, they're projections of their own. Now, across the country, Americans, left, right, and independent, reacted with a rare unity, disbelief. It really doesn't matter which party you support. Nobody wants politicians dragging the military into partisan warfare. The public understands that once the military becomes a political instrument, democracy collapses. People saw 6 lawmakers telling troops to resist the sitting president, and it kind of felt like a line had been crossed at that point, one we've never approached in modern history. Now, to most Americans, this wasn't a reminder about lawful orders. It was a political message disguised as patriotism, but delivered by people who should have known better. This is why this outrage is so widespread and so intense. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. If the chain of command fractures, even for a moment, the consequences are catastrophic. I mean, imagine units hesitating during a foreign attack. Imagine rival interpretations of presidential authority. Imagine factions within the armed forces responding to political loyalties instead of lawful orders. This is how great nations fall. Quietly, internally, through confusion and division. And by telling soldiers that they can defy President Trump without specifying a single example of an illegal order, Democrats just walked this country right up to the edge of a constitutional cliff. The stakes aren't academic. They're survival level, and everyone watching knows it. So here we are, guys. America standing in the middle of a storm that the Democrats themselves created. 6 lawmakers lit the fuse. Trump called it out. Schumer panicked. The media distorted it. And now the entire nation's asking a question that Washington hoped you would never consider. If elected officials openly encourage the military to resist the president, what comes next? This wasn't a gaffe. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a dangerous political gamble that backfired spectacularly. And now sedition, treason, constitutional crisis, these aren't abstract ideas. They're on the table. So stay awake, stay alert, because the truth is simple. If the chain of command breaks, the country breaks with it. Hit the like, subscribe, share this video. We'll see you next time.